Welcome to the Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Vantage Fit, the all-in-one AI-powered corporate wellness platform developed by Vantage Circle.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. I am your host Parishmita, and today we have Edy Nathan as our guest speaker on the topic behavioral wellness and why workplaces need to focus on employees' behavioral health. Edy Nathan is an author, public speaker, and a grief therapist. In her expertise, she interweaves her formal training as a psychotherapist with breathwork, guided imagery, ritual, and storytelling. So, Edy, welcome to our show. Would you like to say hello to our listeners?
Yes, hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to be able to talk about the topic at hand, behavioral health.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you here. So shall we begin with our first question? What is behavioral health, and just can you simplify it?
Certainly. Behavioral health is the way that we handle our senses of selves through behavior. So behavioral health could be what happens in our responses to situations that come up that are perhaps difficult or perhaps part of our work lives or perhaps part of our home lives. And the behavioral health is really finding the balance between our good responses to things that we don't expect, like grief or job loss or COVID, and the way in which we handle those things that come at us spontaneously, or the things that come at us that are just part of everyday life. We've got problems with our kids or with our elderly parents or with a boss. And behavioral health has to do with what is going on within your psyche in terms of anger or anxiety or forgiveness or depression. And behavioral health has to do with the responses to situations, and will you respond behaviorally in a way that creates balance and gives you a real core sense of best practices in terms of being able to respond in a healthy way? Or are you responding in a way that is reactive, that makes you feel like you're out of control, that makes you feel as if you're being held hostage, or makes you feel like you just want to quit and leave everything? And so what we're really talking about here is how to get to that sense of calibration and balance.
Yes. So like you're saying that behavioral health is something related to the individual's behavioral habits, or, the individual, how they react to or how they respond to a certain situations.
Absolutely. Behavioral health as an umbrella term really refers to mental health, refers to things that are going on in marriage, family, work, addiction. So we look at all that it's an umbrella term for all of those pieces. I just really did a deeper dive into mental health because I don't think that you can really talk about behavioral health without also talking about mental health.
So like there's a difference between mental health and behavioral health. Would you like to say?
So mental health, falls under the auspices of behavioral health. So how you behave is a surefire way of kind of assessing for what is going on, in your mental health. Mental health has to do, again, with what I spoke of, having anxiety, having depression, having anger that turns into rage. So one of the things that happens with mental health is that if we can learn how to handle it, if we can have tools or tasks that we utilize to help us understand it, move through it, rather than being afraid of it and trying to ignore it. Because when we try to ignore the mental health issues, which fall under behavioral health, such as, mental health or things that are going on at work or marriage and family issues, that when we can say, oh, this is something that's going on for me, and instead of ignoring it, which often within certain cultures, you're told ignore it, don't talk about it, don't let anybody know what's going on. It actually makes the experience of those issues like anxiety, like anger, actually get worse.
So are you saying that because of mental health issues, we can see the rise of behavioral health problems?
Absolutely. And what HR or, whoever is responsible within, the corporate world or the business world, a lot of people who oversee the behavioral health issues that come in, it is truly a new task, especially since COVID, to understand how dealing with mental health issues can affect the overall behavioral health of people in the workforce.
Yes. So I was about to ask this question, like, why are behavioral healthcare services needed in the offices? And keeping in mind the recent COVID-19 scenario and the Great Resignation and everything, keeping all that aspect, why do workplaces still need, or, they need to emphasize on behavioral healthcare services especially?
It's such a great question, and thank you for asking it, because we need to be talking about things that we don't want to talk about. And so often, the mental health issues and the behavioral health issues within the workplace have been ignored or fractionally dealt with. What the part of the reason that behavioral to kind of be on steroids now within the workforce, and the understanding that behavioral health needs to be looked at and dealt with, especially with mental health issues, is because of the intensive amounts of grief and loss people have incurred as a result of COVID-19. And it might not be, the loss of a loved one, although it's 6 degrees of separation. If someone close to me did not, succumb to COVID, I know someone who knows someone who did. And we were all touched by it because of what we've seen and what we've experienced, and how it's taken the way we thought about our own lives and our own freedoms. It's really taken us away from perhaps dreams, perhaps relationships, perhaps moving up in the world in terms of, your work. And what I would love to say is, the more that companies can harness their abilities to tap into the behavioral health issues within their workforces, what will happen is they aren't just then the hierarchy with a workforce. They are actually change agents for mental health, because they're talking about what we don't want to be talking about, and they're acknowledging that there's grief. There's acknowledging that being at home has changed the world, the workforce, has affected perhaps the desire for the Great Resignation, and that perhaps the best way for people to be seen, because during COVID, people felt unseen, and it is about helping people to be seen, to feel that they are being seen by offering help, but offering help within behavioral health that doesn't judge, that doesn't make someone bad for coming forth and saying, yeah, I feel down. I'm having a hard time with productivity. I'm having a hard time feeling like I'm part of this corporate structure or part of this business world, and I need help.
Yes, absolutely. Like, we have seen the rising number of employees who are suffering from depression, anxiety, and stress, but we have very much less focus on that issues. Although we talk a lot about mental health or physical health, but we have certainly missed the point on, I think, behavioral health issues, which is also equally important.
I could not agree with you more. Yeah. I was just going to say that one of the programs that I've been heading up in Canada, we've been talking about having burnout stations throughout, the work environment, so that staff can go to like a burnout station and for 5 minutes do a breathing exercise or relax or just take a break so that they can get back to themselves.
Yeah, so that they can take at least a mindful 5 minutes break or 10 minutes break, so that they can come rejuvenated and sit at their desk and work. Yeah,
that's right. Yes. Yeah.
So can you suggest or refer some common issues in which behavioral healthcare services can help employees?
Within the mental health structure, of behavioral health, one of the best things that can help employees is, number one, being seen, number two, being listened to, and number three, not making the mental health issue something to be ashamed of. So that what that looks like is you're talking about it. What that looks like is if someone says, I need a mental health day, you don't just say, okay, so we're checking off the box, you took a mental health day. You're actually asking the question, what's going on with you that you're needing this? And how else can we help? Do you need more support? What does that support look like? Oftentimes what is happening outside of the workforce affects what's going on with, at work. So marriage is breaking down, or if someone within the family, a parent or spouse or child passed away, especially during these last 2.5 years. So it's really being able to focus in on what's needed, how does this person need some help, and let's listen really carefully, let's give some empathy, and let's develop a rapport around it that has nothing to do with shaming someone because they feel the way they feel.
Yes, absolutely. We need to give not just, the care or services or courses or programs, but also that, that support in a humanitarian way, which is, I think, very much important, without not looking the other aspect, just, giving that, yes, I'm there for you. I think it is very important in a workplace.
I could not agree with you more.
So why do you think behavioral health problems among employees are rapidly rising today?
For all of the reasons, we have not been set up for the workforce to come back after such a long, number one, hiatus, and having been part of a pandemic. The very nature of a pandemic means that it's global. No one was unscathed. Everyone got touched by it. And what's happening, I believe, in a lot of the corporate structures is there's not that they want to go back to, work as normal. They want to go back to pre-COVID times. And that's not going to happen because everyone's been changed as a result. So it's about taking a new tack. It's about saying the winds have changed. Our workforce is not the same mentally, emotionally. Their families have changed. Perhaps they had to leave where they were living. So much has changed. And that means that the way that the workforce is looked at, held, understood, and the mental health resources have got to improve. There's got to be many, many more mental health resources for the employees.
So can you suggest some behavioral health techniques which can be applied in the workplaces?
Things that we know is that moving the body and exercise can help the traumatic brain. And what we're really talking about is how trauma affected so many during COVID. The trauma was a global trauma, but a trauma nonetheless. And what we know is that moving the body can certainly help. So one of the things that I corporations or company is leave an hour a day or half an hour a day or even 15 minutes a couple of times during the course of a day for some break, some kind of physical break where yoga is offered, where exercise, planned walk can happen, where someone has time to perhaps listen to some music. We know also that music can be really a game changer. I'm not talking about talking to other people or playing a word game. I'm actually thinking about this changing the structure of the brain, which we know exercise, yoga, there's science behind what I'm saying, can really change the structure of the brain. Music can change the structure of the brain. And what we're trying to do is help the workforce change the way that they've been holding on to the traumatic experience and the losses they may have incurred. The other is writing. The other is, even 15 or 20 minute quick coaching sessions with people who understand the brain and the correlation between the mind, the body, and the soul.
Yes. So you're saying that taking it into a holistic aspect is really important in the workplace, right?
Absolutely. I didn't know if using the word holistic would go over very well, considering this is about, kind of the more of the workforce. It is definitely a whole that the more that the people who oversee the behavioral health programs can begin to understand the importance of the mind, body, and soul perspective.
So, why do we need to implement behavioral health programs in corporate wellness today?
For the very reasons that we've just been talking about. What we know is that when the workforce feels like they are being seen, they're being attended to, they're being cared for, there's a developing rapport, they're going to have a greater desire to do their work, to think about the bigger picture, to think about how they can be contributors. If someone's mental health is greatly fractured because they're grieving, because they're depressed, because they're anxious, because they're angry, because life is feeling really so out of control, or they don't feel that they're being seen or appreciated, the desire to work, the desire to think about the bottom line of profit means far less to them if they themselves don't feel seen or cared for.
Yes. So coming to the end of this session, Edy, would you like to put some valuable suggestion to our listeners, or shares your opinion on behavioral health or to the corporate wellness programs, how they can improvise it? Would you like to suggest something?
One of the things that I would love to suggest to these behavioral health programs, or the programming of behavioral health, is small programs, small pieces that you incorporate can make big differences in the lives of the people who work with you and for you.
Very true. Yes. Valuing them is very important, right?
Yes, it's so very important. And to the workforce and to the people who are working within that environment, I would really love to suggest that you don't wait for someone to help you. There are ways for you to help yourself. Certainly, on the internet, it's easy to find 10-minute or 15-minute exercise programs, breathing programs, yoga programs. You can do it yourself. DIY. Don't wait for somebody to say you need help. Do this as part of a practice, and what you'll find is a union between your mind and your brain and your body, and the resources that you carry within you are there. They're there no matter what. It's just about accessing them. And if you're feeling hopeless, talk about it. If you're feeling anxious, by hiding it, it gets bigger. By talking about it or sharing it with even one person, or even writing about it, can diminish the power the anxiety or the anger has over you.
Thank you so much, Edy, for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast. Please do subscribe to Vantage Fit Corporate Wellness Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and our YouTube channel for new episodes.